This is Unrendered on IKtv. You can follow us on Twitter at IConcepts. I'm Tony Regisford, and I'm chatting with Honorable Camillo Gonsalves. He is the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Camillo, I have to ask you this. Prior to Mr. Augustus' selection as the Deputy Consul General, there was, I was told, a story with him being read out of his religion. He was evicted from the Seventh-day Adventist Church for improprieties. It is alleged.
Yes.
Were you, or if not you, because you were not in the Minister of Foreign Affairs then, was the government aware of this? And did they think that they had sufficiently investigated that before choosing this man?
Well, like you said, I wasn't there at the time, so I can only speak to what I'm aware of now. And I don't believe that the government was aware that he was read out. In fact, I don't know if he was read out. Mr. Augustus, certainly while he was in New York, our times overlapped, was referred to as Pastor Augustus. And he was very active in New York in the Seventh-day Adventist Church and was a very integral part of the Seventh-day Adventist community in Brooklyn. So I don't know if that's a fact. And it may be, if it is factual, it's factual, but it may just be one of these rumors that circulate about people. So I don't know.
Do you get a sense that this whole episode has thrown some egg on the face of the ULP administration?
Well, look, it's never a good thing if you have to recall a diplomat for doing work outside of the scope of his employment. But the facts of what he did, or what we know, are not nearly as embarrassing as what would have been potentially embarrassing if some of these allegations were true. It's not a good moment that you have to recall a diplomat, but I think that what we have done, as I said, we got news on Wednesday and we had acted by Friday, indicates that we took it seriously, we investigated it, and we acted on it. And I think that should be something to the credit of the government and the administration.
This whole episode has brought up the Canadian situation where, you know, St. Vincent now requires, citizens of St. Vincent now require a visa to travel to Canada.
Yes.
And of course, I've seen it on social media in particular, people trying to make the link or trying to say it's just another in the chain of events. We lost that status with Canada.
Yes.
It is alleged, and I'm talking just after the posters on the social media, because of our relationship with Iran, you know, and there's no surprise that I hear that Augustus was issuing passports to Iranians.
Yes, yes.
Now, is this a conspiracy theory? Is this a straw man sort of scenario, or just to gain political ascendancy, or is there some smidgen of fruit in the fact that our relations with countries like Iran may have affected us with the status we have with Canada?
Absolutely false. I mean, absolutely false. The fact is that the visa restrictions imposed on St. Vincent and the Grenadines by Canada were not imposed solely on St. Vincent and the Grenadines. They were imposed on other Eastern Caribbean countries that have no relationship with Iran or Venezuela or Cuba, well, not no relationship, but certainly a lesser relationship.
Right.
And this myth that we have this bosom buddy relationship with Iran such that it would affect the relationship with our traditional allies is a falsehood. Canada imposed its visa restrictions because Vincentians disproportionately are applying for asylum status in Canada. They're going to Canada without visa, and the minute they arrive, they claim that they're persecuted because of spousal abuse, they're persecuted because of homosexuality, they're persecuted because of their political henchmen who are trying to kill them in the night and following them, and facilitated by people who have admitted that they have signed false declarations on behalf of these people in order to get them a status. And that is why the visa restriction was imposed, because Vincentians who went there lied. That is what happened.
Is there any window of opportunity in the medium term, even short term, that such an action by the Canadian authorities would be revoked? Well, we have to demonstrate that we've cleaned up that sort of mess and we in fact are worthy
Well, what we have done, what I have done personally in my conversations with the Canadians, is say that this is a priority issue for us. Not only because of the visa restriction, but because in the difficulty in getting a Canadian visa now. You have to travel to Trinidad and Tobago.
Right, it's costly as well.
It's costly and it's inconvenient. I have said to them, and I have invited them to come and scrutinize our passport processes, because they had some difficulties with the passport processes in St. Lucia, the manners in which people could get new passports in new names and so on. They have indicated to me that their problem with us is not so much our passport processes, which they're comfortable with, but it is with the number of asylum seekers, the number of people seeking refugee status.
Right.
I have suggested to them that there are only one or two lawyers and law firms in Canada that are facilitating and processing these fraudulent applications, and maybe they should do some looking within their own borders.
Right.
It is a conversation that we continue to have. They appreciate the difficulty that they've placed us under, and they want to help alleviate it. But if I were being honest, I couldn't say that I predict in the near term a reversal of this. But it is something that the government continually hammers home with the Canadian government.
Now that you're a foreign minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs, not a foreign minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs, you are on the other side. Before you were a diplomat, so now you have purview over the diplomats out there. Help me to understand what it is in if there's a process at all in selecting such persons to hold diplomatic positions overseas.
Well, it's the Prime Minister has indicated that it's an issue of ability and suitability. St. Vincent and the Grenadines does not have a professional cadre or a diplomatic corps the way that some larger countries do.
Right. Is there any country in the OECS, for example, that has career diplomats?
No OECS country has career diplomats. Yeah. But you may find one or two diplomats in the OECS that have made it a career.
Right.
But there are no career diplomats. There's no diplomatic corps. The countries that have professional diplomats like that are Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, to a lesser extent, Barbados. But even in Barbados, there are a number, for example, the current permanent representative to the United Nations in Barbados is not a career diplomat. He's a political appointee, a former labor union man. So what we have to do is we have to find people, usually in the private sector, who have the skill set, who are suitable to the task, who can be trusted to conduct the nation's business confidentially and ably, and who want to go. Very often, if you suggest this job to a successful business person,
it's not attractive enough.
It's not attractive enough. First of all,
salary is low.
The salary is low. They have to abandon their business. They may have to uproot their spouse and children, and many of them will turn it down.
Yes.
We don't have this massive pool from which to choose. So it is a process of give and take, of trying to understand people who are best suited for particular jobs. The ambassador in Cuba, Dexter Rose, he has specific skill sets to that job. He went to school in
Spanish,
Cuba.
His wife is from Cuba, and I can see that.
Exactly. Now, people have commented on the fact that we have selected a number of pastors in the past. Not only Mr. Augustus, but Steve Phillips, who was former Consul General in Canada, was also, and that we have also selected a few politicians. The skill sets of the pastor and the politician are very similar in this context.
I'm waiting to hear.
It gets better. Both of them are involved generally in outreach. Both of them are involved in community building, in being part of the community, in attending a number of events, in being advocates, in convincing people. Now, when you have a consular position, think of Brooklyn or think of Toronto.
Right.
These are not positions where the primary responsibility is in interfacing with the state, the government of Canada or the United States.
It's the people.
It's interfacing with
the Vincentian citizenry.
Brooklyn becomes your constituency.
Right.
Toronto becomes your constituency, or if you want, your parish. And you have to tend to the needs of the people in that constituency or parish, however you want to place it. So those skills honed by the politician or by the pastor become very useful in that context.
So I think it's important at this point to point out that a position such as the ambassador to United Nations is a different position
different
altogether.
Kettle of fish.
Right.
Totally different kettle of fish. Those people, ambassador to the United Nations, ambassador to the United States, our representatives in Brussels.
They interface with the states.
They interface with the state. They have to have a better grasp or a firmer grasp on policy, on political matters, on international relations, on state-to-state diplomacy, on multilateral affairs, on bilateral affairs. A lot of things that would not necessarily impact the day-to-day business of a consulate, who will be tending to the needs of the diaspora. Now, if somebody is caught or about to be deported or something like that, or is arrested, the consulate has to then defend and protect the rights of that Vincentian, and in that way interface with the state.
Yes.
But what Consul General Selman Walters does when he wakes up in the morning, or Deputy Consul, former Deputy Consul General,
he does not call the Mayor of New York.
He doesn't call the Mayor of New York. He doesn't call President Obama.
Right.
Lacelia Prince may call President Obama, but not Consul General Walters.
Not Selman Walters.
So his primary focus is on the diaspora community, and which is why we've chosen the United Kingdom, Brooklyn, New York, and Toronto as places where we place our consulates, because this is where we have large diaspora communities.
So, you know, let me just throw this out before we get into our final segment. It is fair to say that the selections of people, both in the diplomatic arena, the ones that deal, the ambassadors, I should say, that deal state to state, you know, St. Vincent with Canada, St. Vincent with the US, etc., and those that are selected to do the work of the consulate, right? It is fair to say that they largely have to be sympathetic with the policies of the government of the day. Otherwise, they will not be selected. But hold it there. Okay. I'm just throwing that out so my viewers can stick with us for the last segment. This is Unrendered on IKtv. When we come back, we'll be into our last segment with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Camillo Gonsalves.